Welcome to the DevReady podcast. On today's episode of the DevReady podcast, I have John Sermon. So for those of you that are new here, I haven't met John before. We're learning about him together for the first time. John, thanks for jumping on today and let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, mate. Thank you for having me on. Very welcome indeed. So, I guess for me, I've pretty much made my professional career out of growing partnerships and networking. So what I do now is I actually run the partnerships and alliances team at a buyer's agency called Your Empire. So we've been buying property for our clients in Sydney for the last 21 years. We also help them in Brisbane and Melbourne as well. I run a small business networking community, which has been going for 6 years in Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne. And a bit like you, Anthony, I'm very curious around people. My second name's Sermon, which means I can talk until the cows come home. So I run a podcast called Lifestyle Pirates, which is, as we spoke about earlier, it's very much like Joe Rogan, but without the weed.
So in that journey, so were you in a corporate job doing something different before you started where you are now?
Yeah, look, I guess my background, I did a marketing management degree at university. I was back in the UK, so I'm originally from the UK. My theory was, I think like most people, when you're that age, you've got no idea what you want to do. I certainly didn't. So I thought, well, every company needs marketing, so I'll do a marketing management degree. That was the science behind it. Had 3 fantastic years, met some great people. Went to Coventry. As the saying is, you get sent to Coventry. I actually volunteered to go there. And then came out of it, and really, I wanted to have a bit of time off, like I had done non-stop education all the way through. And then I guess one of my school friends reached out and said, "Hey, mate, we're recruiting for a job in Windsor, so near the castle. And mate, do you want to come along?" And I said, "Not really, no." I didn't even know what he did, but he said, "Look, you would do me a favour if you came along, and and if you get the job, I get a little finder's fee." So I said, "Okay, cool, all right, I'll do it." So you kind of fresh out of uni, you put on your dad's suit, and then I kind of bowled into this interview, and the business was a currency brokerage. It was doing foreign exchange payments, and I guess that was very much an original, what we would refer to now as fintech, and a real disruptor in the market. And so I in essence spoke to my boss, or my then would be boss, for about an hour, and it was quite interesting. It was quite a cool service. There's very much value in that as well. And so he said, "Look, do you know what the business does?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Do you know much about us?" And I said, "Look, no." I said, I'm a week outside of university. I said, "I just want to have a bit of downtime, but my friends asked me to be here." And he said, "Mate, I really appreciate your honesty. I can teach you what we do, but I can't teach this. I can't teach conversation."
Mm-hmm.
So they offered me the job, and then I pretty much started 2 weeks after that. And even then had to think about it. And it was back in the day where my sisters both worked in like HR and recruitment, and it was back in the day where it was like, I'll do my year in industry and then I'll work out what I'm going to do. I'll do a year. 7 years later on, that's how it continued. So, and I guess what we did as a business, which has kind of sprungboard me to what I do now, is we did international payments and money transfers. And so in the UK at that time, you had a lot of the English that were buying properties in France or Spain or Dubai. You had them emigrating to Australia, yours truly.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would do when we were talking to them about making a payment for their property, Anthony, is I'd go, "Hey, you're sending your euros to, this Spanish developer. What's their name?" And so the client, you'd give me the developer's name. So what I would do is then help you with your payment. It could be your deposit, your balance payment, a stage payment, what have you. Then I'd call you and say, "Hey, Anthony, just so you know, we've just helped this client transfer some funds to your bank account to secure their property or pay for their property. Do you deal with any others?" And of course they did. And so that's then how I built a bit of a referral network of developers and things in that space. And then I went from kind of more leads than I could deal with, because I basically just did all this channel sales or vertical selling, whatever you want to do, referral partnerships where we were solving that problem. That then kind of sprungboard me over to Australia, because we spent a lot of time dealing with migrants. So you kind of had this natural curiosity around Australia, and a lot of POMs go to Canada and all of that. And so again, you'd start to speak to a lot of migration agents and say, well, mate, how easy is it for me to go over there? So I got a job over here in 2010
Mm-hmm.
with, I guess, Australia's kind of most prominent fintech back then, which was called Osforex. They're now a listed entity under OFX. But again, that was just building out their distribution channels and referral networks. So that's very much kind of given me my probably identity really over here is I'm a bit of a serial connector. I'm like the go-to guy. But working in an industry where you solved a lot of problems, I would then bring those people together, because I'm like, well, if I've just transferred money for an expat who's buying a property, you should be speaking to a mortgage broker and then maybe a buyer's agent or things like that. So then I kind of created this community and became the go-to guy. I then landed up in the property space after 11 years at OFX, and that was because actually I used the business myself to buy my investment properties. And when I got out of corporate, I then said, well, what do I want to do now? And we can maybe touch on that as a different question, but moved into that space 4 years ago. Okay. So it's always been through dealing with people, how I've kind of got my journey over here.
And that's for those listening. If you're just starting out, we have a lot of entrepreneurs and startups that listen in, and some of them may be fresh out of uni like yourself, or they're coming from a business, but they may not be exposed to that side of the business that you've been talking about. So they don't understand how important it is to have those relationships and partners or referral partners or channel partners, however you want to call them, to support a business.
Yeah, very much. And I think what I would say to that is, if you don't have it, get access to it. No one makes it on their own. Professional golfers have a caddy. Entrepreneurs, normally you have an entrepreneur who's the big ideas person. They've got the passion, the drive, and they'll get a CRO, a chief revenue officer, or a chief operations officer to help, I guess, give them the kind of rules of engagement and the guidelines, because they don't want to do that stuff as well. So my experience of dealing with business owners and entrepreneurs is no one does it on their own. So that was actually a kind of nice segue, because I created this business community over 6 years ago now. And really the genesis of that was just bringing people together. And so I was an employee when I created this community, but I was like, I want to hang out with people. I want to learn from other business owners. I want to learn from other employees. I want to learn about different industries. And I got a taste of that dealing with something like money transfers, because whilst you're just transferring funds, there's a raft of different reasons. It could be transferring a pension, it could be IVF payments, it could be buying a watch, it could be buying a car, it could be buying a property. There's loads of rhyme and reasons. And so I then kind of build a bit of a community around that to say, well, I'm learning so much, but I want to learn more, but I also want to solve more problems. So it came from an area of curiosity. I guess I'm an outsourcer. Like I don't want to be an expert in everything. I want to niche into what I do, but then I want to be a phone call away from someone to help me with something else. And then I think a lot of my network and connections will buy into that, because then they'll then call me and say, hey, John, do you know someone that can do this? The most random one I had, to give an example, I was out with a medical non-bank lender for dinner, because they very kindly refer us, I guess, doctors and medicos to help them buy property. Yep. As you know, property's like a sport over here. It's the top. It's the top 3 barbecue conversations, along with super and novated leasing. But so we were out for dinner, and he's like, I just can't find anyone to help me do this. I said, what's the problem? He said, one of my clients, he needs a loan to buy a light aircraft. Okay. And I went, oh, I know someone that can do that. And he just said, of course you do. All right. But literally at that dinner, I text the guy and said, hey, can I connect you with someone? This is what they're doing. He said, yeah. And they did the deal within a week. So, that's the power, I think, of going out there and being curious and learning through osmosis. I'm in the office today. I'm a big fan of just turning up and being there, because you never know what you're going to overhear on the phone from someone else, or you never know how your day is going to end up. Certainly for me in real estate anyway.
Yeah. And I think that's something lost with the work from home, is those random moments. So we're completely remote office at the moment since COVID. We don't have those, you overhear something, you just join a conversation moments. You can't do that in teams. Even if you see people on a call, you can't just jump into a call. And I'm sure there's probably plenty of moments like that are happening day to day. But that being able to have a network and being able to just call anyone, and you're the guy who knows the guy, is someone that everyone needs, whether you can be that person or not. But then that, if you can't be that person, like you said, that's getting yourself access to a network that can do that then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where, and I get a lot of questions about where should I start. Um, and I always say, hey, look, if you're petrified about going to a networking event or a meetup or something like that, what do you love to do? Is it footy? Is it whiskey? Is it watches, wine? Is it racing? Yeah, motorsport. Like, what is your passion? And then go to something that is aligned with that. So if you like wine tasting, go to a wine tasting event. At least you'll be comfortable learning about something that you love, and then naturally you will then start to engage and have general conversation with other people in the room.
Yep.
And that's kind of the premise of Bio, which is this business community that I run. So it's very much connecting through stories and experiences. So we do it in the evening. We have a monthly cadence. So rewinding a little bit back, when I first moved here, I love my music. I love my trance and drum and bass, electronic music. So I started off a club night.
Yep.
So I ran a club night called Digital Therapy in Sydney. And the thing is that exposed me as a new person in a new country to different people outside of corporate, but also we all shared the same passion. And so you got to meet people under strobe lights or whatever, or pre-drinks or whatever. But then it was like, so what is it you do? And so how are you here and all of that? So that was kind of a community that I built early on, but the commonality was music. And so for people that are a little bit worried about going to events because they don't know who they're going to meet or they're going to rock up on their own, find something that gets you excited, that you're passionate about, and then do one of them. And then just get used to dealing with people. And also flip the script a little bit. I'm very curious when I go to an event, Anthony, around what is it you do? Why are you here? Because for me, I just want to, I've got like a mental Rolodex. I refer to it as an illness sometimes, because I've just got a Rolodex up here. And I'm like, I just want to know people that can,
you just need another tool in the toolbox almost. Like I know that person. I know someone else I can call, or someone that does something else, and just have something available up the sleeve, really.
Yeah, but it's the more weird, the wonderful. So I guess where I am, my current job is, I met Chris, who built the business 21 years ago. He was very much an original, an OG when it came to the buyer's agent space. But I met him in 2013, again at a networking event. He's a POM. I said, what is it you do? And he was explaining this concept of being a buyer's agent, and that's years ago. And I thought, that's quirky. I've never heard of that before. And I thought, you've got a really interesting way of looking at life and education and your personal journey. Okay, I want to keep you close. So we'd go for beers, we'd catch up, we'd exchange ideas. And I guess when you surround yourself with the right people, you don't need a coach or a mentor, because you're surrounding yourself with people that have been there, done it, or they're doing it, and you're lifting each other up by proxy. All right.
You're sharing information, learning by osmosis, as you said.
Exactly right. And so with Chris, it was like, I'm really curious. And then years later, I'm now working for the guy, and we're part of the team. So that's the power, I guess, of being curious and meeting people that are a bit quirky, is you learn. And Anthony, you said about the whole osmosis thing when you're in the office. Like, for me, I talk to a lot of business owners about this. Is there's a concern where that kind of interaction at work is almost becoming too transactional. It's almost like ordering an Uber. It's almost like ordering your Uber Eats or a WhatsApp chat. There's no curiosity, because I'll Teams or Slack you a message. I probably won't even ask how you are or what'd you do at the weekend. I'll just go, Anthony, I need this, or are you in today? Great, can you help me with this? So that kind of layering and building relationships, and maybe just being curious about what you're working on in the AI space, or, hey, what businesses, you mentioned you do digital transformation. So what are some of the things that businesses are asking you to do now? Hey, that's cool. I might have someone I can introduce you to, or we might be going through that bit as well. If you don't give conversation a time, then you don't really grow. You don't learn anything,
And you need to have those moments. They're not something you can force. So what we would call the shit talking sessions over lunch.
Mm.
Just random conversations you would have over the
100%.
table while everyone's eating, and people just coming and going and warming up food, and then we're going for a walk or whatever would happen.
Mate, it's one of my favorite books. I can't remember the author. It's called Never Eat Alone. And in essence, it's, if you imagine, if you're in the office, if you're in the city, you've got breakfast, lunch, dinner, you could have breakfast, lunch, dinner with three different people every day for 5 days. What could you be learning?
Yep, there's 15 different people you've met potentially.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
And that's,
there's time, right?
And that's the approach we've sort of taken with like this podcast. So it's a marketing tool. It's a way for us to get content. There's content for you to share. But then we meet great people like yourself, and you don't have a commitment of, say, 3 hours to go and meet someone, which is an hour of before driving and travel plus after. So it's a quicker way to do this same thing and learn to meet someone. And then we're actually having a proper conversation where we're learning from each other. So this is where I've learned to develop my skills in asking questions and learning more about what you're trying to do. I don't have that married into like a networking event properly yet. I'm still the person that if I see two people talking, I'll just stand on the side without interrupting.
Yeah.
So I don't like to interrupt.
And that's totally cool, right? And I think this is the thing is, you mentioned about time. When we're putting on events, we're vying for people's time. So how do we put on a good event? If we're buying property for people, it's typically people that don't have the time to do it. So we're giving them their time back, so they don't have to spend Wednesdays and Saturdays doing open homes and dealing with real estate agents that and fielding all the calls and things. So I think you're right. When it's investing your time, how do you invest it wisely to get the best return? Because that's the only thing you're never going to get back.
Yep.
And so if you're not investing it by engaging people or learning from podcasts, I'm a horrible reader. Absolutely horrible reader. A lot of my information comes from podcasts because that's just the way I learn more. So again, it's the time. Yeah. I was actually reading a book called Stolen Focus by Johan Ekman. And the irony was, I couldn't focus. I couldn't finish it. So I just listened to the Audible book, and it's a great book. I recommend it, but I just can't read books.
I think that comes down to, you can listen to a podcast as you're doing something. I'm mowing the lawn, I'm listening to a podcast. My kids' swimming lessons, I've got a podcast I can listen to an hour.
Yeah.
And then to read a book, it's complete attention and focus. Or to read an article online, like you have to stop, think about that, and actually process it. Where if the podcast is there, you may zone in and out, but there's nuggets you will take in because you'll hear them or you'll replay and go back, oh, what was that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm a big fan of Diary of a CEO. I mean, most people would have heard of that. High Performance podcast as well. The reason I like them is because I feel like I'm the third person at the table. I feel like it is that conversation, a bit like you standing at the side of the room. You're listening to a conversation, and you're just breathing all the good stuff in. I mean, some of them are meaty. So I know when I'm driving to, when I'm looking at property, I'll have them on. Sometimes I'll have to turn it off because I'm like, oh, you're getting to a juicy part. I need this to give it, to your point, I need to give it the focus. Mate, I certainly couldn't look after the kids listening to one. Jeez. I mean, I don't have any, but I think that would be difficult.
It depends. So if we're playing, they're there. If they're at swimming lessons, I don't have to pay attention to them. They're under control with their teachers. But I find that in my space, it's trying to keep up with a lot of news, not necessarily just trying to learn skills. Whereas that's sort of like the avenue you've got it from. It's learning from other people's experiences to get some skills. I do that, but it's more, I'm in such a fast-paced, changing environment in the tech space with AI and whatever else it may be, that if I stop following up and keeping up with things for a couple of weeks, I'm now behind.
Yeah.
And then once everyone starts talking about it, you've missed the early train, if that makes sense. So if you can keep on top, then you can understand how to apply that to your products or things that we're building for clients or internally to try to get an advantage and help us deliver better value to someone. So there's a lot of just trying to keep up, which is the headache, the pain point.
Yeah, big time. And I think in your space, it's very much going to be that race, because you might have 10 people at the moment doing AI, as an example, 10 of the big businesses. Only one is really going to kind of make it, or maybe three, right? So they're all racing to be that top three, and then the others will just become superfluous.
Yep.
So it's a bit like Facebook and MySpace. Facebook threw everything at the wall to then stick, and MySpace just drained away. And
It's
maybe Tom's still got his account and loads of friends, but
yeah.
I'm certainly not on it.
It changed hands a couple of times. I don't know if it's still around or not. But
Yeah.
so probably touching on that Facebook and MySpace there, that's probably a great way. That was community building. It was networking. Like, that was a way to do it. What are some of the key things that, if you're in business and you're looking at trying to grow and get to that next level, how can you find some of how can you go about that networking activity and try and grow and try and develop these partnerships so you have that problem that you had earlier where you had too many leads to do anything with?
In my experience, building relationships takes time. So if you look at relationships that you have with your partner, your friends, your family, they've all taken a long, long time, even some of your best friends, And so to build professional relationships takes that same amount of time. And so what I would always recommend is it's quality, not quantity. Now, this can be different in different relationships. If it's enterprise sales, if you're selling Salesforce software, then you've got a top amount of people that are buying it anyway, just in terms of like headcount and viability. But even then, it takes time to know who the person is that you're dealing with, the decision maker, build the relationship, and then be there when they're thinking about you. And so it's, for me, how I've done it is I've almost looked at it, gone, well, if my client's going through buying a property, what are all the touch points they're going to have in that journey? Who are the people that are going to engage with them, other professionals? And then how can we provide an ecosystem for our clients? So I've not even asked for anything yet, but I'm saying when we have clients, because we've been doing it 21 years, so we get a lot of business. And so how do we provide them an ecosystem of professionals that we're the property part, but we have a broker that we can refer to, we have an accountant that we can refer to, we have an advisor, and we have lots on our panel, and the panel is forever growing, but it's making sure that we match them up. If they want Brisbane, well, who can we refer them to in Brisbane or across the country to make sure that those referral partners align with our values in terms of doing the right thing, but then also that's providing the client a safe space as well. And so that just happens over time. And like you have with your friends and your partner and your family, things go wrong, but it's the way that you communicate, right? It's having those rules of engagement and those expectations around, hey, here is a good client for me, or here is a good opportunity for me. Here's not a good opportunity for me. And that's okay. It's just important to know the good and the bad. And maybe also share, over the years, when I look at some of our greater relationships, we'll have regular catch-ups, share successes, but also share where we haven't converted or they haven't converted. Well, why was that? What happened? Were the values aligned from a client side of things? So it's surrounding yourself with your people. I think in corporate as well, it's actually having kind of segregation of duties as well, because when I was in corporate, you were the hunter gatherer, so you were the BDM. Mm-hmm. So when you have a role like partnership manager, it's a bit like AI, right? It can cover all and sundry. And so it's then having kind of segregation of duties. Well, what is that role? What are the expectations of that role? What are the things that I need to think about? Because when you're going off to build new partnerships, they take time. And then ultimately, it's a kind of B2B to then C sales approach. It's not just straight B2C or B2B. You're selling to, or you're advising the person about what it is you do to then build enough trust for them to give you their clients. Now, they're businesses that have paid good money to get those clients through SEO, through their advertising, through their brand. So you've got to build that trust that you guys are aligned, and that takes time.
I think that's probably the biggest thing, which is the trust to refer someone to someone, because there's a risk there where you'll damage the relationship because the person you're referring to lets them down. And then it's on you because you recommended them.
Yep, big time. And that's where getting to know the person first. You can't do business with everybody. There's a lot of kind of LinkedIn automation going on now, which is fine. And for some businesses, they need volume. But again, even when you get the volume, well, who's going to look after it? I always kind of chuckle at these things because when you get a message saying, "Oh, we're trusted and authentic and all that," and you go, "Well, you've not written that," you know. So, so straight away, I'm not going to prioritize you. I'm a big fan of what you call social proof. So it's the
Hmm.
same way that we're talking. One of your previous guests said, "Hey, you should be speaking to John," and "Hey, John, you need to go and speak to Anthony to be on his podcast." Great. Well, if you two are hanging out, then you're kind of my person anyway. We're on that level
Yeah.
anyway because we're hanging out with the same people. That's the way a lot of it will come, and that's where the best thing is. Let's say you're connected with someone on LinkedIn that I'd like to engage with, and let's say this podcast goes really well. Um, I might say, "Hey, Anthony, great to chat with you the other week on the podcast. I really loved learning about your business. You're connected to Mr. and Mrs. Smith on LinkedIn. Do you mind just doing a bit of an intro? I'm just curious to learn about what they do. You know, seeing if we can work together." So it comes from that side of things. But be authentic. That's one thing I'd also say is just be authentic. No one likes to be sold to, unless you're in sales. Every salesperson likes to be sold to. Um, but no one likes to be sold to anymore, and you can tell. All right.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially with AI now, you
yeah,
know when the messages aren't written by people. You can
I had
tell.
one the other day. And it was quite funny because I'd said I picked up the office phone and I said, "Oh, John's speaking," and but the AI message said, "Hi, Chris," and I said, No, it's John." But again, straight away, that company, I didn't even listen to the message.
Yep.
So they would have had a connect, but what does that mean? It means nothing.
Yeah. On LinkedIn, I've got 8,500 connections. I don't know the people. I'm just
Yeah,
connecting
exactly.
because it's an opportunity to try and send a message.
Yeah,
Something happens,
yeah.
it happens.
But
Um,
that's the thing. If your goal is quantity, that's absolutely fine.
yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. So it's like if depending on what the purpose is it quality or quantity? And that's when you want to build relationships. Because as people, we can only look after so many relationships anyway. We can only nurture so many relationships. And
Yep.
so, if it is a quantity thing, you're going to hit saturation pretty quickly anyway.
Hmm.
Um, you know, so
And I
that's
think
probably where
there's
there's
an
been that
actual
side.
number that's been studied. I think it's like 56 or 57, or
Yeah,
somewhere around there is like
it's
the limit of how much you can actually manage well.
yeah, it's Dunbar's theory. It's Dunbar's theory. I think it's just it's around that number because you've got your friends and family, which is your
Yeah.
immediate circle. Then obviously on the other end of the continuum, we've got your Twitter and your LinkedIn feeds, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's maybe between 50 and 100 is like the optimum
Hmm.
of good relationships as well. But again, I think this is where business owners will probably have a slight advantage to employees that are in maybe a sales function or any other function is business owners can kind of choose who they do business with.
Yep.
It's one of the perks of doing business is if you don't want to deal with that person, you don't have to do business with them. Whereas if you're an employee and you've got KPIs and targets and you just got to hammer the phone and
You're
try and
forced
make
to
it
it.
work. Yeah, but
Yeah, if you can
but
get in that
again,
position where you can be selective, you're in a very good spot.
yeah, but I think again that's where it comes from knowing your values. So going back to what I said earlier on, if you're worried about it all, find something that lights you up and go to that. Um, if you're in a sales role or if you're in a business and they're not aligning with your values or you don't like what they're about, it's okay to move. Like there are businesses out there that will find what you want to do because that's when you'll really come alive.
Hmm.
And you've got to care about what you're doing. From my point of view, anyway.
No, I believe the same. You've got to take care about what you're doing, take pride in it as well. So you want to be able to deliver for whoever you're being referred to.
Yeah,
Otherwise, what's the point? Like, people want a relationship with a person, so like you mentioned, get to know them, and then you will refer them if you know they take pride in what they do as well, because then they know their name's on the line or their reputation, so they will want to deliver. They're not going to just stuff around and
yeah,
wreck the opportunity, because then it also wrecks a relationship potentially with that partner,
yeah,
and that could be a real impact to their business too. Like, people are not here to play games most
yeah.
of the time.
No, you're right. Because actually nowadays people can't handle it. People don't like ambiguity. There's enough ambiguity online. People don't like it. Um, and also, like most of life nowadays is just showing up. If you say you're going to do something, do it. When I was running the nightclub events, I'd get DJs asking me all the time, "Oh, can I play at your event? Can I come along?" And I'd just say, "Yeah, sure." But come along to an event first, check it out. It might not be your vibe. You might not like, we're not the biggest and the best. You might not want to, but come along, show up.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of people that didn't, well, why am I going to book you if you're not even going to show up? This is something you want to be interested in. We have it with Bio as well. People want to join our community, and I say, well, look, before you join, before I'm accepting your application, come along to an event. They might not be your people, and if they're your people, great, we'll have a conversation. But they might not be, and the amount of people that don't show up, it's like, well, why would I want you in the community if you're not even going to do what you say you do? Like that's a 101,
Yeah.
But that's part of it. That's show up to the office, as we spoke about. Show up to an event. Show up to a meeting. Show up to LinkedIn. Show up to a podcast. Just show up. You're already ahead of most people, which is very sad, but you're already ahead.
It even comes down to showing up, like you said on LinkedIn. It's leave a comment, not just see content and pass by, because that'll help that person in the end. Leave a comment. That's going to add value. It'll show someone else that someone's interacting with it, and it'll help them grow their brand and community. Like that's a very simple way to do something, but majority of people don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I always like, and maybe I'm too optimistic, Anthony. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, but when I'm doing something sales related, I go, well, how would I like to? Because it's not about me, but if I want to leave feedback or a comment or to be followed up or whatever, how would I like it? If I'm busy, and we're all busy, what does that look like? And because normally people are people, so it's you go from that side of things. And if you don't feel right doing it in your gut, then they're probably not going to like doing it as well.
Yeah, it's like they're saying when you're a kid, you treat people the way you want to be treated, that everyone tells you, and then that continues. It doesn't change. It's having a relationship, understanding there's a person on the other end of whoever you're talking to, whoever you're writing a message to or a comment. I mentioned, if you put yourself in their shoes and say, all right, I would like people to leave comments on mine, but that means I should leave comments on theirs. So start what you want to see, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm curious now, I'll ask you a question. So with AI, we've obviously spoken about kind of differentiating ourselves and turning up. And, I have a thing where I wear kind of weird color blazers because you always stand out in events when there's a photographer there. With AI, that's obviously kind of giving everything a universal approach. Mm-hmm. So how do you see that? So if I'm a salesperson, how does AI help people stand out?
The way we approach it, or there's really two lenses there. So if you're a salesperson or if you're just a business, it's do you cut costs and replace it with AI to then achieve the same output? Or, which I guess you would probably take this take, which is how do you do more in the same amount of time using AI to provide extra value? Mm-hmm. So then how do you, if you're doing a report potentially for a prospective buyer as a buyer's advocate, what's your above and beyond that? If you had the time to do, you would add into that report to give that extra information to that client. Mm-hmm. So how can you get AI to add an extra layer on top and provide another analysis that you don't have the time to do?
Yeah.
Or it's how do you leverage the tool to do more?
Yeah.
Because you can do 2-3 times the amount of work. So how are you going to utilize that? Do you want to do 3 times the amount of jobs?
Yeah.
Cut a third of the people? Or do you want to deliver 2 times the amount of value?
Nice. Can I ask another question?
Go for it.
So with AI as well, because I was in a business forum the other day, and we were talking. A lot of these guys use AI for their work, and again, maybe I'm just a bit too people related and old school. But my question is if we're giving all the remedial and run of the mill tasks to AI and outsourcing and offshoring, who are the people that are learning that then actually progress through a business? So you remember kind of back in the day, people would be a business, they might start as the post person or the tea maker, and then in 20, 30 years, they're the CEO or something like that. If we're providing this kind of solution of all the remedial stuff, who's learning it to then progress through the business? So if I look at a legal firm, mm-hmm. who are the juniors and the paralegals and the people that do the run-of-the-mill stuff to learn how that world works and how the game works to then become a partner in the firm? And the same with the other professional services as well. So for me, you're going to have this knowledge gap with businesses where they're not going to, because no one will want to go into those industries anymore because no one's recruiting for them because they're all all offsourced. So then you're cutting off this kind of lead source of partners and things, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So I think it may be that the way we see businesses operating now will change.
Mm.
So you're not necessarily going to have that gap because you won't need to have that vertical progression through an organization.
Mm.
It may be that the people that come in, they're supervising the AI. So you're a junior, you learn through the reviewing of all the reports and analysis. You don't necessarily need to do that work.
Yeah.
Because it's the non-trivial work that you don't need to do necessarily, but it was the only way it could be done before. So you had no choice.
Yeah.
So it may be that the function has changed, but the outcome is the same, but it's done differently. So you need to be very good at being able to read and learn through things without doing.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be the biggest change.
But then do we get rid of intuition?
It might happen.
So that gut instinct, that kind of thinking about things a bit differently.
I think no, because that's just how I'm wired. I run that way. I have to make decisions, and it's present as much data as you want. I've got a feeling that this way, or I prefer this, or whatever it may be as well. But I think the biggest change is potentially going to be. It's been a huge shock with how fast the AI has gone from I can write you a simple blog post to actually being able to do what we would call the very creative, logical tasks like programming. So if you're keeping up with any of the news, there's a huge thing now that it can write code. And everyone's writing code now. It's almost becoming a disposable... You can write disposable apps like you had on the App Store, where it used to take tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to write a program when it's thought out properly. Now you can write something yourself using one of these tools in a couple of hours and then throw it away. So what does that do to the value of what we can produce, where there's... Through experience, you learn how to put all these things together and deliver a product that actually delivers value based on what a business's long-term vision is, not just solving a problem for tomorrow and then it's thrown in the bin. So there's a shift there in being able to be the creative person that can come up with the content and understanding how to use the tool to still be that person and not be replaced by it, because you can't trust what comes out of it 100%.
Yeah.
That's why you're Chris on a phone call.
Yeah.
If someone hasn't vetted that, hasn't done a process properly.
Yeah.
It's understanding how do I leverage this tool to do my job better. So if you're in the building industry, you would have had a spirit level forever. Yeah, like it's tube with water, then it's a spirit level. Now there's these laser levels, but if you're not keeping up with the tools, the progression of the tools and innovations that are happening, you'll do things the old way, but a lot slower. Where someone who's got one of those laser levels that can draw lines around the entire room, you can put up all the little cornices, whatever it is, at a perfect level in a fraction of the time.
Yeah.
It's understanding how to use the tool the right way to do a better outcome.
Yeah. I like it. Nice. Very good. Very good.
Cool. So if anyone wants to find out more about yourself or any of these networking events that you run, how can they do that?
I'm on LinkedIn. So just type in Jonathan Sermon or John Sermon on LinkedIn. Feel free to do a little bit of a connection. Maybe mention on your connection, that you heard me through the podcast, just so I can know where you've kind of come across my details. Yep. There's almost a little bit of a LinkedIn lesson there as well, is don't just connect with people, put a little message in there to say where and how you heard of them. But yeah, always happy to have a chat with people and learn a bit more about their business and go from there.
Awesome, and we'll add your LinkedIn links in our show notes. John, it's been a pleasure chatting to you today. Thanks for your time, and we'll thank you for that.
Mate, you're very welcome. Look forward to catching up again. I appreciate it. Cheers, Anthony.